Good morning, this is Tony.
Hi, Tony, it's Jeanette.
Morning, Jeanette.
Morning.
I do.
Hi, Joe, it's Jeanette.
Morning, this is Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine.
Hi,
Morning,
Jeanette.
Lorraine. Morning, Lorraine.
Morning, Joe. How are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm hanging in there.
It's good.
It's hot. It has been really hot the past few days.
Yeah, down there it has been. Pacific Grove hasn't been too bad. I was in San Juan Bautista.
Oh, it was
5
hot
days
there.
ago. It was 100 degrees. I couldn't believe it.
I believe it. I believe it because it's been that here too. It's been crazy.
Hey, Joe.
And we don't have air conditioning in our house.
Wow.
Hey, Joe, I just want to let you know that Anna called in and said she might run a little bit late. So if we hit 9 o'clock, she said to go ahead and start the meeting and then she'll join shortly. She was going to join the meeting in person and she was running.
Okay. Thank you, Jeanette.
Sure.
So let's see. See what time it is here. Oh, one more minute. We have everybody. Jeanette, do we have everybody? Can you see everybody here? I see Lorraine and
We
myself.
have pretty much everyone. Like I said, Anna's going to be joining shortly.
Okay.
We still have a minute to go.
Okay.
Is Marianne coming?
I don't see her joining yet. She could be joining shortly as well.
Because I missed the last meeting, well, is Anna still the chair, correct?
She's still the chair of this committee.
And she has just arrived
Okay,
on the dot.
just arrived in time.
Walk into the room.
Perfect. Oh, there's Marianne. Marianne joined me.
Mayor Velasquez has entered the building.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right up here, Vice Chair. Right here.
I don't know if Anna can hear me or not, but I was just about ready to start the meeting, but you're here, so here you go.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for stepping in. By the way, let me just put my mask on and get ready here. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll keep time. Just 9:01. Okay, perfect.
9:01.
Good, thank you, everyone. So we'll call this meeting to order. And it's the meeting of Monterey Salinas Transit District Board Operations Performance Committee. And today is June 13, and the time is 9:01. And we have our directors meeting us via Zoom and myself here in the boardroom. For the public that wants to make comments, there is a meeting ID number. If you can please join in that meeting ID number, and there's also a telephone to call and join to make public comments. So we will begin. And I will go ahead and open up the public comments on matters not on the agenda. So any members of the public may address the committee on any matters related to the jurisdiction of MST that are not on the agenda. There's a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker. If you can please be brief and to the point. Do we have any public comments at this time? Okay, we see none here in the boardroom. Any
Any on Zoom?
on Zoom?
I do not see any.
Okay. Then we will close our public comment matter, and we will move on to our consent agenda. And for today, we have approval of the minutes of the Board Operations Performance Committee meeting on April 11th of 2022. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So move. Carbone.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. And Jeanette, did you get the first? Who did the first motion? Was it?
Carbone.
Okay, Director Carbone, and then it was second by Director Worthy. Roll call, please.
Okay, Director Barron,
Yes.
Director Worthy,
Yes.
Director Emilio,
Yes,
Director Barrera, Director Barrera, are you on mute? Okay, I'll come back. Director Carbone
Yes.
and Director Velasquez.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion passed for the minutes.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is we have 4 action items to discuss today. And we'll begin with 4-1, review of operations performance. And this is in your agenda packet 7-1, and I will turn it over to Carl Sedoi.
Thank you, Chair. And just reviewing our performance, we continue to do better than last year, which isn't hard to do. Not as well as the year before that or the year before that, but we are, seeing steady growth in ridership, our passengers per hour, a measure of efficiency, our on-time performance is within the standards. Really, across the board, we've been doing very well. I'll make an announcement in the general session, but we did had a remarkable over 50 days without a preventable accident. We had a run so over a month and a half, almost two full months with no preventable accidents. It equated out to over 500,000 miles by our employees driven without an accident. So we are going to be having part of a celebration in June. We'll be having some taco trucks come visit our facilities in Monterey, facility in Salinas and King City. And we'll be celebrating that remarkable accomplishment as part of Safety Month. We'll be having a number of activities related to that. One other interesting note, again, I'll highlight this in my presentation to the full board, is as far as our ridership numbers and certain things that are happening in the economy. And this will also be probably raised a little bit in our budget discussion as well. Hospitality employment, which is a major driver of our ridership here, is still down 25% from pre-pandemic levels. They're down 7,000. Generally, pre-pandemic, there were 28,000 people employed in the local hospitality industries. We're down to 20,000 currently. College enrollment at Monterey Peninsula College, Hartnell College, and CSUMB is down 30%. If you were to take those numbers and just assume that 10% of those persons with those jobs who are no longer going to college use transit 3 times a week for a round trip, that's something off the back of the envelope, 600,000 trips and over $1 million in fares that we're not collecting. with those lost jobs and people not going to school right now. You know, there are some, like I said, some assumptions in there. I don't think I was being overly ambitious, 10% and riding 3 times a week, but the numbers add up really fast. So it's going to take us some time to recover for the schools and the hospitality, which are major drivers of our ridership. And so when we talk about our reserves, which are also in my report, our cash reserves, we're going to want to be able to keep those up for a while and draw on those for the next several years while that comes back. So which you can see in the cash flow projections, we're still well above our board mandated levels. And we have, as of this month, we'll have expensed all of our COVID relief funds, federal COVID relief funds, CARES, CARISA, and ARPA, which is good because that means in a future budgets, there won't be anything to claw back from us. What's bad is there's nothing left to claw back from us. So we are now relying on those funds that we were able to bank, local funds, state and local funds that we were able to just keep in the bank while we used our federal funds. We're going to start having to draw down on that over time and try to manage ridership growth and restoring service and managing that, drawing off our reserves over the next several years until that time. So other than that, you know, everything else is going as planned, no surprises in our operations. So that concludes my operations summary report.
Thank you, Mr. Sidorik, for that report, and thank you for providing those informations in terms of some of the ridership numbers and the impacts still to hospitality. Those are pretty significant numbers, and as well as the college. And I know obviously we have the budget that we'll be looking at today as well, and maybe looking at some of those cash reserves and looking at, you know, whether it would be feasible to look at the current reserves and if we can increase those to support in those times when we're not going to have any of the federal funding. But I'll open it up for questions. Let me take it out to the public first before I come back to the directors to see if there's any questions. So is there any members of the public that have any comments or questions on item 4-1, the review of the operations performance? Okay, I see none here in the chambers. Any online?
None on Zoom.
Yes, one quick question.
Did we have someone?
Yes, Director Barron.
Oh, okay. Let me take it out to the public first, and then I'll bring it back, Director, to the directors. Okay, so just one more call for anyone joining us on Zoom. If there's any comments from the members of the public. Okay, I don't see none. Then I will bring it back to the directors for comments from directors. Go ahead, Director Barron.
Thank you. Carl, you mentioned 20,000, give or take, hospitality workers. Do you think that our decreased ridership is a result of fewer hospitality workers or fewer of a lower percentage of those hospitality areas, those hospitality workers taking the bus, or is it a combination of both? So how much of this is sort of related to, you know, the uptake of bus service, and how much of it is related to the lower levels of employment?
Yeah, if you look at, we've got a new report for you in the general manager's report, starting on page, it's the general manager's report starts on 137 and about 4 or 5 pages in, page 142, you'll see percent of monthly ridership and revenue hours. We've been able to consistently show over the years the biggest predictor of ridership is the amount of service we provide. So not surprisingly, the more service we put out there, the more people ride it. And because of you know, some of our staffing shortages with drivers, we've had to cut back service a little bit. You can see on that page the big drop in service hours that we did right after COVID, and we've been slowly bringing that back. Then in around September or so of 21, we started cutting services back a little bit because of driver shortages. Ridership is going up slightly as a result of that, but as more people are going back to work, but it's a combination, loss of riders and loss of service. It's a combination that we're going to need to balance, and we're hoping with the implementation, we have a new class that's in right now, and we have a class scheduled to go right after that. So we hope to be back closer to full employment this fall, and then implementing the results of the comprehensive operational analysis that we're going to brand it internally as the Better Bus Network. With that increased frequencies in lower income areas, we're hoping that's going to generate higher ridership in communities. So we're looking for implementation of the COA results to help drive some improved ridership, even as hospitality in the schools start to recover.
Thank you, Carl, for that. Any additional questions, Director Barron?
No.
Thank you. Any other questions from other directors? I see Director Worthy.
Yes. My question is, Carl, I know that on a national level, this is also a problem. Have you spoken to any of your colleagues from some of the other areas to see if they have similar issues, or is it really about, you know, the schools and the hospitality, or is there other reasons other than that that we're seeing lower?
I actually have a slide in the presentation to the full board that was part of the PDF that I sent to you.
Mm-hmm.
That shows us compared to some regional peers from a national level. This is happening all over the country, just in different ways. And in some areas, like say in the San Francisco Bay Area, especially the rail operators have seen a much starker decline. And where you have office workers who were using transit who are now working from home. You see in those areas where there are economies that have maybe a lot of white collar workers who no longer have to go to a downtown city core, those systems are being affected much worse. Our local economy, hospitality workers, you can't bus a table from Zoom, and your retail operations that are down on the wharf or Cannery Row. Those are still, you need people there for those jobs. The question is how much online learning is going to be happening in our local universities and will require students to actually travel to campus for the future. That's still a bit of an unknown out there, and how that's going to impact our ridership on those partnerships. But to answer your question, this is a challenge nationwide, but the specifics of the challenges are unique to each community based on how their local economy is supported by public transit.
Yeah, thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that question, Director Worthy. I know I was trying to find my notes, but I was also a part of a discussion in terms of the hospitality industry. And I know some of the figures that they provided in terms of the hospitality workers that are still not back, and how long that's going to take, and some of those impacts to the local economy obviously it's pretty devastating. In Monterey County, I think it's the fourth, I believe there was some data that talked about it being the fourth economic stimulus for us in Monterey County, and some of those major the workforce that is either not going to return to hospitality, and they're having challenges in that area. So I know that's a major impact with the schools as well. So I think we'll look at, you know, how they transition back, whether it's going to be in a hybrid style for some of the students that were going to school. Some of them are coming home and doing the online, and for some of the parents, you know, that is probably a better option for some of the students as well. But so we'll have to look at what the next couple of months looks like. The end of the year for us, it's going to be really critical to see how we move forward, and especially with the implementation also looking at, how we are going to move forward with looking at those communities based on the data and the survey that was received for implementing the different ridership based on the workforce. But thank you. Any additional questions before we move on to our next item on the agenda?
Just a
Madam Chair,
comment.
this is Tony Barrera.
Hello, Director Barrera. Do you have a question?
I don't, you know what? I do not have a question, but I do have a comment when it's appropriate.
Okay, if it's a comment in regards to item 4-1, it would be appropriate now. If you want to make your comment.
Yes. Well, I want to commend Mr. Sidorik. I've been riding the bus a couple of times a week. I want to commend the drivers as well for their professionalism, on the safety factor. I really appreciate the way they treat their riders. So I'm pretty happy being part of this team. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barrera. Director Carbone?
Through the chair, just a comment. Sorry about my dog. So just a comment with the fuel prices, it seems like ridership would be going up. And do we think that the government, or that it's looking like with the fuel and everything going on, that the higher ups are going to look at free transportation for public transportation in the future here?
Thank you, Director Carbone. I know that Mr. Sidorik did provide some data in terms of some of the state funding and what's being allocated to what's being allocated to transit and as a priority, rail and transit, but I will let him provide additional information.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the importance of providing free transportation. Right now, no one's willing, so free to the customer, right? It's going to cost somebody something. So the question is, pre-COVID MST was bringing in $10 million a year in passenger fares, right? So if we were to get back to that level of ridership again and offer free transportation, where would that $10 million come from? Because that pays for, operating expenses, fuel and wages and things like that. There seems to be reticence at the state level to provide ongoing operating expenses. So there's been push for maybe one time, 3 months, the governor proposed 3 months of free transportation. The legislature is not recommending that in their budget. They are not recommending that governor's proposal at this point. They're still negotiating that. Those negotiations are going on today, actually, today at 11 o'clock. I won't be able to listen in because we'll probably be having a board meeting. There's also some bills being pushed forward by some members of the legislature to, they've morphed from free transportation for 25 and under to now it looks like just having arrangements where you offer past programs through an agreement with community colleges, local colleges, and high school, primary schools, which we already do. So, as I said, there seems to be a lot of talk, but not a lot of action, and a reticence to provide the operating assistance to make that up.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I think we'll have to wait to see after some of the budget negotiations and
Right.
After June 15th to see what happens with some of those proposals. But thank you for that comment. So if there's no further comments, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. unless I see any other hands for additional comments. Okay, seeing none, then thank you so much. And Carl, before we move on to 4-2, I do want to say congratulations to our safety team for being able to have that amazing accomplishment of no preventable accidents in 50 days, right?
Right.
And the 500,000 miles without an accident. So thank you so much to everyone on the safety team and to the drivers. Thank you. Great job. So we'll move on to the next item.
Actually, 62 days.
62 days.
62
okay.
days. I'm sorry,
62 days.
I didn't have the number in front of me, so I didn't want to overstate my case, but I just called it up. 62 days, 500,000 miles.
Oh, great. We congratulate the team and congratulate all the drivers for keeping our riders safe and also themselves. So congratulations. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 4-2, receive report on the bus stop shelter replacement plan. And I will turn this over to Mr. Paul Lopez.
Good morning, board members, ELT, MST staff, and members of the public. My name is Paul Lopez. I'm the facilities manager for MST. I'm here to give you a small PowerPoint presentation for our shelter replacement plan. So there are two types of shelters that are out there right now, and they are glass shelters, which we want to replace. Next slide, please. So glass shelters are expensive to maintain their look, and due to the glass being vandalized along with rusting issues on the metal framing and the solar lighting, these shelters are outdated and not working anymore for us. They're extremely expensive to replace the glass now. We've actually don't even have anymore. We have to have it made. So to replace this type of shelter glass is getting very expensive. Next slide. Next slide. So they end up looking like this due to the glass not being replaced and the rust on top. So they're over 20 years old. So they're due for replacement. Next slide, please. So this is what we're running into now with this, they call it acid graffiti. It etches the glass and the glass is no good. You have to dispose of it and replace it. And again, it's about another $850 to fix, just to replace the glass on these shelters. Next slide, please. So these are the new type of shelters that we've been putting out. We have these shelters in stock. They come with bright solar light, garbage can, and passenger friendly and easier to maintain. Next slide, please. There's a solar lighting. Next slide. So these are the shelters we have stock. They're at our storage location. And these ones came from the Presidio of Monterey and 400 Liggett stops. And they're just ready to be basically installed. Next slide. So the shelter replacement priority will be implemented by passenger ridership. I provided a list of shelters to our planning department for data on passenger ridership, and these are the locations that are highlighted that have high ridership. And so I would start the installation of those stops in order of ridership and then move forward with the stops with lower ridership count. Next slide.
So it looks like the majority of those are in Marina and Salinas.
Yes, majority of Marina Salinas. Yeah. So yeah, and these again, Salinas and Marina, they service a line 20, 29. Well, the 20 is a busy one. At 29, the 41, and the 49 are some of these shelters are located at. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you for that information. So Mr. Lopez, let me take it out to the public first, directors, if you don't mind, and then I will come back for comments and questions from the directors. So anyone from the public has comments or questions on the bus stop shelter replacement plan and the presentation that was provided? Okay, I can't see anyone on Zoom.
I'm seeing nothing.
Okay, it looks like we don't have anyone on Zoom, so we will come back. Anyone from the comments from the directors?
Madam Chair, Tony Barrera.
Yeah. Tony, yes, Director Barrera?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Sidorik, you and I have spoken about this one. The bus stop over there, I don't know if it's 28, line 28, 29, and on Salinas Road and Highway 1. There's a gentleman that I guess he's camping out there now, and there's been a couple of times where he sleeps on the bench. And my concern has been that area looks really scary for some odd reason. There's a lot of debris, there's trash. So I'm very concerned if there is a family that wants to take the bus, well, that person that's there, and I'm sure they're in some kind of need, but they sleep on the bench, so there's nowhere to sit. And it feels a little bit intimidating. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll send one of my crew members out there to look at that stop. I haven't heard of a report of somebody staying at one of the stops, so operation's pretty good at going out to the stops and reporting issues like that. So I'll have it checked out.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. And also, if you find out some of the process, I think it's important also for the directors to know if we find this throughout in some of the shelter bus stops, what is the proper protocols to be able to call either, someone directly from MST, or is it, we need to contact the localities?
Usually it goes to customer service and they write a report to us, and then we get the report and we go out and service the stop.
It happens pretty quickly.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, thank you, Director Barrera. So I'll move on. Is there any other questions from the directors? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Mr. Lopez, I do have just a quick question. You gave us the priorities, the locations, and the replacements. Obviously, most of them are going to happen in Marina and Salinas. What is the time frame for the completion of that replacement, the bus stop replacement plan?
So I want to start in the beginning of July and run it through August to get this started. So hopefully by the mid of August, I should be completed, just depending on my crew that I have, because my crew is the one that's putting them together, my staff's members.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So then we expect those to be completed hopefully by August, September. Yeah, and thank you so much. I think it'll be a nice addition, especially as we transition into some of our more climate action kind of processes, and being able to have some of the solar lighting and just making them look nice. I think it's really important, nice and safe, right? And that the cost of replacing some of these existing structures, and that we really look at, some of the cost savings for newer ones. So thank you. Thank you so much for that information. And we look forward to the new replacements coming by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 4.3, receive project report on South County circulators. And I will turn this over to Mrs. Michelle Overmeyer.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation. I'm going to give you a little bit of background so that you have the full picture here. So as you'll recall, we used some COVID relief funds to study the conversion of the general public on-call service to local fixed route circulators in Gonzales, Soledad, Greenfield, and King City in late 2020. The consulting firm Farron Peers was hired to analyze the current on-call service and design a series of 4 proposed fixed route circulators in those cities. They also helped us with public engagement. I met with the MST directors that represent each of those 4 cities and their respective city managers. And I also met with Supervisor Chris Lopez. Farron Peers used that general feedback to design draft routing concepts that were then vetted through the public by way of public presentations at each of the 4 city council meetings. An advertisement was placed in the Monterey County Weekly, and a Spanish ad ran on the radio station KLOK. A community survey that showed the proposed routing and asked for feedback was open for about 2 months. And it was advertised on MST buses, the major bus stops in South County, and through the parent liaisons at all of the South County school districts. Notice of the survey was also included in utility bill inserts for 3 of the 4 cities. MST advertised on social media and asked its partners, such as Hartnell, Me Memorial, Sun Street Center, and others to help us get the word out that we wanted feedback on these proposed routes. So overall, the community response was really good. We did receive some feedback, and that was put back into the design. So over the last year, MST staff has made some minor modifications to the proposed routing based on infrastructure limitations. So for example, we may need to move a bus stop a block or 2 if the sidewalk is too narrow from the ideal location. So our staff has met with city staff to discuss these modifications and request that each of the cities manage the installation of the required bus stops, either with their in-house labor or with contracted labor, and MST will reimburse those expenses. So King City has been very receptive and responsive to a partnership with MST. They've completed their procurement solicitation for a contractor. Tomorrow evening, staff will be requesting that City Council award the bid for the bus stop infrastructure and proceed with installing those bus stops. The cost is estimated at $30,000. Due to staffing challenges, City of Soledad has been a little farther behind in the process. Soledad wants to go to the Planning Commission and City Council again before their Public Works Department will get involved. I know that Soledad does want to bring in their planning consultant, EMC Planning Group, to go through another round of public engagement and specifically work with business owners who are concerned that they might lose the public on-street parking spaces. So once the planning approvals are in place in Soledad, then their Public Works Department would seek design proposal cost and estimate from an engineering firm, and then they would go out to bid for the construction. So on Wednesday of this week, I have a meeting with the Soledad Public Works Director. I'm going to review the extensive public outreach we've already done and see if we can leverage any of that and move this forward to the construction phase. City of Gonzales has obtained a proposal from Cannon Associates, which is one of the city's on-call engineering companies, to prepare construction documents and for the public bidding of the proposed bus stop improvements. To design 10 bus stops there in Gonzales, Cannon's fee is about $18,000. And the city's public works director is estimating a ballpark cost of $200,000 for actual construction of the bus stops. So I'll be talking with him later this month to go over the King City process and see if we can use a similar approach that's a little more cost effective for the Gonzales stops. And then finally, Greenfield. Our planning manager met with Greenfield Public Works staff and city manager in April. There were 2 stops that the city staff was concerned with because they would require the loss of on-street public parking. Greenfield staff said that they would get an estimate together. However, about 2 weeks ago, we received notice from their city engineer that they did not put together an estimate for us. And the city is now concerned with 5 bus stops that would result in the loss of public on-street parking. So I'm working on getting a meeting with the public works superintendent at Greenfield for later this week to review the planning process that has already taken place in the discussions we've had with their city staff over the last year. And then before I conclude my presentation, I do want to recognize our planning manager, Sloan Campy. He's done a lot of work on this project. He's been a huge help to me, and he's going to be leaving MST this Friday. So I will be taking this on, and I will be bringing an update back to this committee later this year. So that concludes my update, and I can answer any questions, and I'm sure Sloan can help out also.
Michelle, I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for that report. So Director Worthy, let me take it out to the public first and
Okay,
then bring it
yeah.
back to bring it back to the directors. I know that we'll have some questions on this, so let me do the public first to see if there's any comments. So any comments from the public on item 4-3 on the South County circulators? Okay, see none here in the chambers. Any on Zoom?
Don't see any.
Okay, seeing none on Zoom, then I'll bring it back for director comments, and I'll begin with Director Worthy.
Hi, Michelle. I have spoken to our Public Works Director, and I'm sure you're aware of, we're going through some changes in our city. I was concerned to find out that you're telling me that you're not meeting with our Public Works Director until the end of the month. What did you finally decide on? And this $200,000 is a new thing to me when you reported that. So he and I have kind of been talking about it, but we just have a lot on our plates right now. So this is a very important, and we do want to address it. But I just wondered when you had planned to meet with our Public Works Director.
Yes, I have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, June 29th.
Okay.
I would do it sooner, but I'm busy also. I'll be at a conference next week, and then we have a staff retreat coming up. So the 29th was the soonest I could get that in.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director Worthy. Any additional comments from other directors?
Yes,
Okay, Director Barron?
thank you. I just wanted to say, it's a challenge in every city, always trying to figure out what to do with the oh so sacred parking spots and repurposing them for any other purpose. So I just wanted to thank staff for their efforts and just say, hang in there.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Barron. Okay, any other directors? Okay, I don't see any hands, so I do have some questions. Thank you, Michelle, for that. So I am concerned just in terms of, and thank you, Sloan, also for your work on this. Just in terms of my city, obviously the city of Soledad, and looking as King City already is moving forward, they already got an estimate. Theirs is 30,000. Obviously it's going to be different, right, for each of the cities and how many of those bus stops are needed. So how many are in the city of King City? And I think for me, it's looking at what King City has, because obviously the number of bus stops is going to contribute to the cost, but it looks like Gonzales for the 10 bus stops, 200,000. That's pretty significant in terms of the disparities in cost for this. And then the city of Soledad as well is, I want to look at the engagement that we've done already and looking at how many responses were received from our public to be able to go back and look at, I want to look at the process that city of King is using. And then if there's a recommended process for us to move forward with this, because going to the planning commission, going back to the council, doing more outreach when outreach was already conducted, I want to make sure that I see what those outcomes are to be able to justify why the city wants to move forward. I'm open. I mean, obviously we all want public transparency, but it's also looking at if the efforts have been done already, why are we duplicating that and extending the time when, looking at the time frame of when we want to complete this as well. And just some of the challenges, thank you, Director Barron, for noting that with every city, there's going to be challenges. But I think at the end of the day, what we've been trying to do, and thank you to the MST staff, is really looking at how we best move forward with the process that is a better transit that's a better transit system for our residents. And how do we really as cities understand that this is what's being done in the best interest of our communities and our residents to be able to provide these types of transportation services, and how do we work together in partnership?
So if I can respond, there was a slide that I presented sometime last year. I'll send a copy. I'll ask Jeanette to send that out to the committee members. And this lists all of our outreach efforts that took place when we were planning the route. So that might answer some of your questions. And then as far as the bus stops, so King City is taking their contract to their council tomorrow. We're looking at 16 bus stops in King City in this first phase. The first phase of this is to put in the bus stops that will help us expedite our line 23 and then get in the minimum needed for the fixed route circulators. So 16 for King City, 22 in Soledad, so that's the biggest, 10 in Gonzales, and 16 in Greenfield. So yeah, the cost, that ballpark cost for Gonzales did seem pretty high. In the budget that you'll see at the full board, the 200,000 is what we were estimating for the total of the 4 South County cities.
Okay, and just to be clear, Michelle, you said we can go back and we can do the procurement process, but the cities will get reimbursed from MST.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've had meetings with, I believe, all of the city managers or public works directors on this because we were getting slowed down and I was fearing it was going to impact our timing on implementing the circulators, and something that I've advocated for, which is something the transit agencies use, and I'm not so certain about cities, but is piggybacking on a procurement. If King City procurement, can Soledad purchase off of the King City procurement? Those are questions that it was something that I encouraged the city managers to look at, a way of doing a joint procurement, going out to bid and getting quotes for the entire thing. Every city's different though, and their procurement policies are different. It is a strategy that we've used in the past at MST. We purchased pretty much most of our buses are purchased on this type of, piggybacking or off of a standard purchasing agreement with other transit agencies.
Yeah, no, thank you, Carl. And I think as South County cities, we have been really utilizing and vocalizing a regional approach, especially in the South County cities, and how do we regionalize our efforts and work together. So I think this is something obviously that would fit within that model and looking at what's already available. Looking at King City's process. And so my last question, and I know Director Worthy has a comment, and then I want to move on to our next item because it's 9:44. I want to make sure that we finish all of our business today. The timeline for completion of the circulators, what is the timeline that we're looking at to be able to complete the project?
I think I might hand this one to Sloan, and we can look at King City because they're the farthest along. So Sloan, if you can estimate what the construction timeframe is and installation.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm on, hopefully everyone can hear me on Zoom up here. And thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members. The timeline for construction, it varies a little bit. It will vary. King City, if we're using that as a model, it is actually coming in a little bit earlier than what we were projecting in terms of construction time. I was guesstimating around 8 weeks per city. King City will come in right around, I believe it's 6 weeks. And so putting that in the context of actual timeframes, we're looking at this probably mid to late fall for King City's installation, should everything go according to plan. Of course, there are always contingencies. There's always something that could happen. But that's around the time we're looking for. Before the new year is what I would estimate King City to be.
Thank you, Sloan. So we're looking at 8 weeks per city, but really looking at late fall, but before the end of the year. That was our goal.
That's our goal.
That's our goal. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I was that was clear for us as directors. So thank you for that. We'll have a sidebar conversation in terms of Soledad. But I'll move on to Director Worthy for the comment, and just the last.
And I'll make it quick. I'll make it really quick. I know that the last time we had a meeting, we discussed this, Carl. You had talked about joint procurement. And I believe, Sloan, you met with Gonzales Public Works after that meeting. I did mention that to our Public Works Director, and I just wondered if that came up at all in your meeting.
I also mentioned that to him, Director Worthy, and it did not come up formally. I mentioned it, as I said, but it was one of
Okay,
those.
I will mention it. I will mention it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Director Worthy, and thank you, Sloan. Yeah, this is really important for us. So as Director Worthy mentioned, we have a meeting as well coming this Wednesday, and I'll make sure that we mention that as well to make sure how we can support to move this project forward. So thank you, everyone. So I also want to say farewell, Sloan. Thank you so much for the time that you were here with the MST, and we wish you well in your next adventure.
Cal State Monterey Bay. So
Oh,
he's
not
going
far. You're not going far.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we wish you well. Thank you. Congratulations.
I appreciate that, and yeah, I'll echo very quickly Carl's sentiment. You're going to see a lot of me still. I will be establishing the transportation program, an eventual department at Cal State Monterey Bay. That currently
Great, great. Well, it's nice to have an ally.
Yeah. Likewise.
Thank you. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, and we are at 9:48, and I know we do have our 10 o'clock meeting, but I will turn it over to Mr. Sidorik for an update on the Salinas Transit Center relocation study that will also be part of our discussion during our regular board meeting.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Real quickly, just as some background for, gosh, the better part of a decade, there's been a desire on the part of the city of Salinas and Taylor Farms to move MST from our property that is downtown, that is our existing Salinas Transit Center. Prior to a couple of years ago, there was just one vision, that was we should move to the Amtrak station, train station, and MST just needed to figure that out. It's not necessarily the location that MST would prefer, given that there really is still not a lot of there, and still nothing in ink as far as when trains will actually be there. And even when trains do come there, they'll only be a couple times per day. Our desire would be to move the center closer to the Alisal corridor where our actual passengers reside and travel, making it more convenient for them. The current site at Salinas Transit Center by no means is perfect for MST, and we are growing out of that. And if we plan to grow transit usage, we will need a larger site. Fortunately, over the past, I'm going to say year and a half or so, Taylor Farms and the city of Salinas have moved a little bit more in our direction, and I've moved a little bit more in their direction. They are no longer saying that the train station is the only place they'll consider. The city of Salinas has offered 4 different locations. MST is required, if we're going to seek funding, any federal funding, we're required to do a study for Title VI and other planning purposes to ensure that we're not having an undue impact on minority populations with any sort of move like this. We have attempted multiple times. The cost of this type of study is a couple $100,000 we've estimated, up to $200,000. And we've sought multiple grants from state sources and federal sources over the past couple of years, and they've been unsuccessful. Taylor Farms has indicated that they would be willing to put up $100,000, half the money for the study. And the city of Salinas has indicated and has put it in writing from their city manager to me that they will pick up 15%, which is $30,000. And that leaves $70,000 to MST then to get the study going. So that seems like a pretty good deal for us. And the city again has identified some spots that are closer to the Alisal corridor. And they would though like us to at least study the Salinas Train Center as part of that. That's part of their ask for the $30,000 input. So we're going to move forward with the study once we get the contracts in place with the Taylor Farms, City of Salinas, and MST, at least for conducting the study. So that's good news. I think that that concludes my report.
Thank you, Carl, for that. And I think someone, if you can please mute your phones, if there was some background noise. Thank you for that. So let me take it out to the public. If there's any comments or questions from the public on the update on the Salinas Transit Center relocation study, proposed study by Mr. Sidoric. Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, then I'll bring it back to directors. Any comments from the directors? And if you can please just use your raise hand features of, actually, let me go back before I bring it back to the directors. There was a comment from the public.
Yeah, Tate Bot, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance to speak up regarding the Salinas Transit Center comment. So yeah, sorry about the background noise. I forgot to mute it. So the thing is, I'm starting to understand what you're going through about the Salinas Transit Center and why you want to connect it to the Amtrak station, and I do respect that. So if you want to do that, be my guest, and I will be more than happy to hear if there's any other issues with any other transit centers that you are having besides Salinas Transit Center. And that's all I have.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Bond.
No problem.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, then let me bring it back to the comments from the directors, and we are short on time. It is 9:53. So any comments from our directors?
Madam Chair, Tony Barrera.
Go ahead, Director Barrera.
Yes, so I just want to commend Mr. Sidoric. I think the conversations with the city of Salinas as well as the Taylor Farms, I think it's going well. I really believe if we're hitting a snag, sometimes Mr. Sidoric may be meeting with city staff, but I'm meeting with the city manager today at 3 o'clock as well. So I believe, and hopefully I'm right, I hope the conversations are going to benefit the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barrera. Okay, any other comments? Okay, thank you, Director. So for me, just a really quick comment. Carl, again, thank you for being able to look at those partnerships. And I think for me, is, you know, obviously the city wants us to relocate. It's not something that MST wanted to do at this time, or it's something we projected already. And this is a good opportunity for us to move forward with the relocation study at this site.
It's something that we, I guess, it's something that we knew we had to do eventually. It wasn't necessarily a top priority for us. You know, things like electrification of our fleet and preparing for that, completion of the SURF project. You know, was a concern of allocating staff time and then actually coming up with funding to build something. Doing the study is one thing, to actually build it. And Taylor Farms has made comments in public meetings saying that they, you know, would be willing to help fund the actual construction if we move. You know, they have a desire for that parcel that we sit on. It is right across the street from their headquarters. They have an issue. They own an adjacent property. They're looking to secure that and have indicated once the study is done and we know where to move, that they would help us with the movement and actual funding of a new facility. So, you know, it's evolved over time. It was, you got to move and you got to pay for it. Now it's, we'd like you to move, we'll help you study it and we'll help you pay for it. So it's been a good evolution. Just not necessarily on a time frame we wanted, but things like this don't always happen when you'd like them to. So we'll find a way to work it into our work schedule.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for that comment. I think obviously we have a lot of challenges as was presented in the budget moving forward, but if there's a spirit of partnership and they want to help with this and making this more accommodating also for the needs of MST, then, you know, maybe this is a time to be able to have those discussions. So thank you. Okay, so we'll move on. If there's no other comments, directors, we'll move on to item 5. There is no closed session items for today. So we will adjourn this meeting at 9:56. Thank you, everyone.